Right. Thank you, Professor Kolita, for that introduction, and all Dhamma friends who have joined this meeting today. Let me begin by clarifying a few things about the title of this, which I have selected, which is Buddha's Riverside Teachings on Crossing to the Shore Beyond. First of all, this shore beyond is not the life beyond the present one. Often the word beyond can be, associated with the life beyond this current life and the life after death. That's not what it is. This shore beyond is to be aspired to within this life, which is, and we are told that we all have the potential. So let us together see about crossing to this shore beyond, which is a transformed situation entirely from the one that we now abide in. The next question that can arise is, why is Riverside teachings? What's special about the river? At the outset, I would like to say that there are no sacred or holy rivers in Buddhism. It is understandable that misinterpretation could be looked at, that is why there is such a river mentioned in the title, because many world religions do have a sacred, shall we say, a holy river. Even in the Western Hemisphere, where you think that there is less of the mystic and in relation to belief systems, the river of Jordan is considered holy. The water is the holy water and a sacred river, both to Christianity and to Judaism. And of course, we know the Ganges, which is the best known for all this, where there are so many rituals and ceremonies in the Ganges, which is considered a sacred river. Now, the Buddha attained enlightenment and awakening on the banks of the river Nirangana. Even then, the river Nirangana is not considered sacred or holy. So, Buddhism has a very rational and scientific approach. There are no holy rivers. However, rivers focus very prominently in the Buddha's teachings in the Sutta Pitaka. And why is this? It's because we all know that the Buddha taught varied persons. They were of different mental makeups, different levels of understanding, different backgrounds, and so forth. So, similes were used because the Dhamma was deep and profound. To explain the Dhamma, there were very many similes. And since the Dhamma is very closely related to nature and natural processes, objects, the objects in the environment, natural objects, can be, very useful as similes. And equivalence can be found in nature to what the Buddha is attempting or is explaining. For this reason, and the area that the Buddha was living in of India, which was known as the Madhya Desha, which is mostly the Uttar Pradesh and Bihar as we know today, was many rivers. The Buddha also lived, he was not a recluse, not a hermit far away in some cave. He lived close to people. This we know even when the Buddha accepted the first path, the grove, Veduvana, gifted by King Bimbisara. It is written there that the Buddha commented that this is very conducive to the practice because it's not too far and not too close to the dwellings of people. So Buddha lived close to the people, and relatively, and there was much time spent in dialogue and discussion and in teaching. But the rivers would have not had bridges or any ferry system, so there would have been long walks along the rivers. One could envisage a lot of time spent waiting to get across to a point that one could do so. And therefore, there were many examples based on riverside experiences. This could be why we have so many rivers. And I have looked at this, and there are so very many. Time doesn't permit us to go through all, but I have picked out a few, which I feel all of them, in fact, are a wealth of treasures of Dhamma. So with that, let me start with the first discourse that I would like to share with you, which is from the Itivuttaka Pali, which is, as you know, a treatise in the Sutta Pitaka. However, it's not like the usual suttas we are very familiar with, which begin with Eva Me Suttam, thus have I heard. Itivuttakas are concise teachings, very discourses which are short and concise and very much to the point. And they don't start with thus have I heard, but so has it been said. Iti Buddham. And to me it sounds as if Evam Mesutang is almost first hand. I have heard this, but here it's nevertheless very authentic, and these are very well liked and very much appreciated discourses. I believe there are about 112 in the Itivuttaka Pali. I would like to share with you this particular one, which is nice and short. It is of a man who is swimming. He is enjoying his swim in a river. He is enjoying the sights, the scenery, the smells and the sounds maybe of the birds chirping on either bank, and he's thoroughly happy swimming, and he doesn't need to put in a lot of effort because there's a current that is taking him along. When suddenly he hears from the shore and he sees that the person standing, he's described as a sharp-eyed person, sharp-eyed, who shouts a warning saying, danger, danger. You are heading to a very dangerous spot where you will get caught to very strong waves. There is a whirlpool. There are crocodiles, very nasty man-eating crocodiles, and demons and so forth. Now, if you were to hear this and you were the swimmer, you and I, what would we do if we had any sense? We would heed it and immediately turn back and swim upstream. But now we are going against the current and it needs effort. Now, this is a metaphorical teaching, and it is said to the person who shouted this, the sharp-eyed person who gave the warning, is considered to be the Buddha. And the person swimming is just you and I, enjoying the sense pleasures and being happy with the sense pleasures. So that's Namviraga. And the current that was taking is the current of tanha, craving for enjoying, craving to be happy, but happy through the sense pleasures. And then he hears this and he has to turn around. What is the moral or take-home message in this sutta? I feel it is that the Buddha's teaching is what is the aim of Buddha's teaching? There is only one sole purpose, and that is to end suffering. There's a warning coming saying ahead of you there is aging, sickness and death, and sorrow, lamentation, and all manner of the world mood would be all the 5 hindrances and various pleasures. The demons actually in that sutta, it has been translated as those of the opposite sex, whatever it is, there are dangers ahead, and to turn around or, to be mindful of this. So the teaching, once again, if you look at it, the teaching is entirely for one purpose and that purpose alone, end suffering. Not only end suffering, Nibbana is equivalent to ending of suffering. That is all it is. And it's actually an extinction of suffering, where the suffering will not arise again. So the name of the sutta is Nadi Sota Sutta. Nadi meaning river, Sota meaning stream. I would like to place another short teaching before we go into greater depth. And that is the simile of the raft, which many of you are very familiar with. This is not a standalone sutta like the previous. It is within a sutta, within another long sutta called the Alagarupama Sutta, which is where a particular monk has misunderstood the Dhamma, and he is repeating it in the wrong way, and he's also been stubborn and not getting rectified by the other ones. So it's brought to the attention of the Buddha, who says that this is like catching a water snake by its tail or its body. You have to know exactly where it's catching near his head, so that he can't turn around and bite you. The dangers of misunderstanding the Dhamma. So this is a lesson. But we are going to talk about at the end of that sutta, the Buddha says that this teaching is like a raft to cross the river of Tanha, as we said, and existence, get across. And it is also asked by the Buddha, when you get to the other shore, you still want the raft. The answer is obviously no, there's little point in carrying the raft around. Now, this has been misconstrued sometimes that after if one were to reach Arahat, then you don't need the Buddha Dhamma Sangha and so forth. The real way of looking at this is the value of this raft. The value of this raft was to end suffering, to get across, not as an adornment, not as for any other purpose, not just for scholarship or for any other to impress on anybody or to say it's not a flag to be flying as though we are Buddhists or we are followers of the Buddha's teaching. It is to make use of it. The raft was to be made use of it. So these two short suttas, the similes, show us that, firstly, that the teaching is entirely to end suffering, and this teaching is to be used, not for anything else, but to be practiced, to be utilized. Now, with that, since there are so many, let us now just sit back. We are all quite familiar with a lot of the Buddha's teachings. If we were to sit back and take a sort of a good view of the entire teaching, the Buddha Dhamma, if it is for the purpose of Nibbana, there are two big chunks or big groups, big aspects, the way I see it. One is the purification of morality, and the other is an awakening to the wisdom, getting rid of the darkness of, getting rid of the ignorance, dispelling of the ignorance. Now, the path is one, and the path is the Eightfold Noble Path, and that has sila, which is what we mentioned, the purification of the person. And then the wisdom is panya. In between, we have sila, samadhi, panya. So the samadhi section, which has mindfulness and virya and samadhi, are actually necessary for both, for purification also. Let us go into this greater depth. We see mindfulness and virya, and also concentrated and still mind are necessary in the purification process, just as much as they are needed for the wisdom. So the way I would like to handle this today's talk is by selecting a few sutras about the transformation or the purification and about the awakening or the development of wisdom. So those two as two broad sections. But before doing so, I just like to also orient ourselves in the type of environment that the Buddha was in when he taught this wonderful and awesome teaching. The Brahmanism was rampant. It was the belief system that was most dominant, but of course there were people who thought there should be something more, and they were, intrigued and looking for something more. So there were so many different sects or ascetics searching for the truth, and Buddha was also one of them. Now, in Brahmanism, ritual bathing is very prominent. The Buddha had throughout had good religious, amity with the other religions. There was no conflict. However, when it's about Brahmanism, if ever he mentioned Brahmanism, he mentioned listed the various features of Brahmanism, but apparently avoided four aspects, which are the most prominent. One is the caste issue. Brahmins thought they were of a high caste, but he never mentioned that when he mentioned Brahmanism. He just left it out because he didn't like that. So the negative way he showed his disapproval. And the ritual bathing, this of course we are going to come to later, which he has met with upfront and many occasions. And then about the sacrifice, the sacrificial offerings, the Vili pujas. And also they were levying a fee for their teaching, which is something that the Buddha, in the Buddhist practice, in the dispensation of Buddha's Dhamma, that is never so, or should not be so. And if that is happening, well, that is not according to the Buddha's teachings. Now, just to say that shortly after the Buddha's awakening, we know he went from Uruvela to Saranath and met the 5 ascetics. But then he seems to have returned to Uruvela not so long after, at some point, when on a hillock he could see the rivers and he could see fires burning. The fires were all these sacrifices and also various Brahmin ceremonies. But he could see the Brahmin ascetics having they used to have 3 ritual baths a day, the ascetics. That was the idea of purifying. So on this hillock, he's supposed to have, Buddha has said very clearly that one is not made pure by water. He has not said that water doesn't purify, but he has said one is not made pure by water. There's slight difference in this if we have time to think it over. And also because he saw all those fires, that's when he gave the fire sermon, Abhikapariyana Sutta, which is not within our credit today. And there is said to be a stupa, remains of a stupa at this point on this hillock in Gaya, back again somewhere near in that area. So with this background of so much of Brahmanism and ritual bathings and all this what we have discussed, let us now look at some of these transformation, how we approach this topic and thought. The first one I want to speak about is the sutta on building of a boat. The sutta is found in the Samyutta Nikaya, I believe, but I'm afraid, I confess I couldn't find its name. But it's very well documented, and at some points it's so poetic and picturesque. I wonder whether it's actually in the Sutta Nipata, and that is why it doesn't have a name. And I'm not that familiar with the Sutta Nipata. I have a hunch that it is in the Sutta Nipata, but I'm sorry I can't exactly tell you But this boat building is once again, the Buddha asks, how do we cross the river? There is no, we need a boat. How do we find a boat? Well, we have to fell a tree. This tree will have to be a very erect with a straight bark, a straight trunk. So in other words, it has to be a direct path. And we will have to shape more the two ends of in the shape of a boat, go through the water. And the root in where you remove all the roots and get it to the appropriate shape is likened to the getting rid of the wrong views. The views that held us down, the tree was being held down, and now it has been felled. So this path, we were being held down in the wrong views. We have to get the right view, and at the other end, the tree was growing and going further with new thoughts. So the thoughts have to be again made into right thoughts. Obviously, you will remove the foliage and the branches. The foliage, the rustling, the foliage is like the speech. So the speech has to be, the wrong speech has to be made into right speech, which we know, we have heard a number of times. And the branches that spread out into the world are like our actions, and they have to be also chopped off. Having done that, now this tree has the bark. Next thing is that the bark, the entire trunk is being polished. That's like the right livelihood, make oneself comfortable, maybe, for the comforts and beauty of one's clothing or one's abode and so forth. But is that enough? Can this now, is it more ready for sailing across the river? If all this is done with the foliage and the branches and the movements and shape and the surface is polished. No, one has to remove the pith of the trunk. You have to remove and dig out the, the pith, which is like you can see a person who is appearing to have a good sealer. Sealer is primarily body reactions and verbal actions. They have stopped having bodily and verbal misconduct. But nevertheless, the person could be having a lot of anger within and a lot of other various, jealousy, anger, greed, covetousness, wanting things that belong to others and yearning for such, and having a lot of ego. So there could be not so much pleasant things within. So this tree, this was like the eightfold path, and in fact, even the tenfold path, it says the next to right knowledge and right liberation is like having the two O's to go across. So that is another which shows us that the purification has to be internal as well, not just the exterior, which is see that in its whole, where your thoughts are also, the mind actions are also purified. Now, at this point, I want to bring in a very, very valuable sutta, where this is mentioned at great length, this purification process in the Vattupama Sutta, or the simile of the cloth. I don't know whether it was cloth or clothes, because Vattu sounds like vastra, clothes. And it was when they saw the Buddha and his disciples happened to see some man dyeing clothes in different colors. So the colors are also mentioned. So whether they were old clothes being made even a new look or what, I don't know. But the Buddha says the simile is that to get a good finished product, these clothes have to be clean. The dust and the dirt, the grime in these have to get rid of. Otherwise, the dye is not going to spread evenly. It will be blotchy and patchy. The final product is not going to be what you really want it to be. Which is how, if we were to cross this path, you want to purify yourself, you have to really not just sit down and say meditation is everything, bhavana is everything, vipassana is the one and only, and that's enough. You have to purify yourself. It's not going to work otherwise. Without the sila, the bhavana is not going to be successful. And of course, bhavana helps in sila, as we said, because that is there in both sections. It helps in, as we started by saying, it helps with the purification and with the awakening. So that is the message here. But there is much more to it, which we are coming to in a minute. Which is that the Buddha then mentions the 16 taints or the mental intoxicants that we have within us. He lists 16. These are called upakilesa. The upakilesa are defined as proximate defilements. These are inside us. Oh my God, my battery is being down. Now what do I do? Switch on this. Excuse me, please. No. That one, yeah. Right, thank you. The proximate defilements, the 16 proximate defilements, before we list them, that would be just an academic exercise if I were to only list them. I think we have just discussed a little while ago that the teaching is to be used, to be utilized. And if it is to be utilized, we can't just list, we have to find a way of getting rid of these 16 as we list them, or thinking of how to. And I would like to refer back a couple of weeks ago, we heard the sutta on this forum, and it's on our YouTube, about a refined person. The Salleka Sutta. The Salleka Sutta has been translated, the word Salleka, as effacement. Both these translations says effacement. And let us look at what the effacement, that it gives the methodology, 5 steps. So I'd like to discuss the 5 steps before I list each of these. And then what I would like you to do is, like all of us to do is, with each one, these 16 fall under the 3 main categories of lower Vesha Moha: craving, ill will, and ignorance. But let us think of them as 3 drawers, and in each of these drawers there are compartments. Little compartments in which each of these are tight. And we have to try to see whether we actually have them. Because in the Salleka Sutta, the 5 steps are, the first is to make up your mind to do this, your determination and your motivation. You have to decide, I want to purify myself, number 1. Number 2, we have to see, do I have this? None of us want to say that I have. When I mention this, you realize, no, that's somebody else has it. We like to see these features as very nasty in other people. But if we can search and incline our minds, this is how it is said, the second one, to inwards. It should be inwards. It only says incline our minds, the translation, but I think it is looking inwards. Search in your drawer whether in those compartments, whether each one of us has it. And just finding it would actually be victory. To feel you don't have it, actually that's a failure, because we do have it and we like to feel that we don't have it. So we are not going to get rid of it in that way. Far better find it. Rummage enough with that drawer till you find it. Third step is to avoid it. And the Buddha has said, you are permitted to look at others and say how awful it is when that person has this characteristic. But I am not going to have that. I have it, I am going to get rid of it. So that's avoidance. You try to avoid yourself getting there. But little by little, step number 4 is called an upward journey, where effacement, the chipping away at it, slicing away at it quietly to get rid of it. And it's called upward journey because you begin to feel lighter and at a greater sense of ease and a happier person, altogether happy because your craving is less, or your living is less, or your ignorance is less as you go along. And finally, at the sermon, it was called quenched, meaning you are completely got rid of it, relinquished it completely, like quenching one's thirst. So let us use these 5 methodologies within our own minds. As I list the 16 and just think, do I have the first one is, I'll try not to keep the Pali word because that seems to sometimes it can frighten, but I think it also shows authenticity that the Buddha is saying. First was covetousness, wanting, you wishing for something that you see in another person. That person has such and such a belonging or whatever, and you like to also possess the same. That is avidya, or wanting what is not yours, but yearning for that. Second comes vyapada, or aversion. And then comes krodha, which is anger, which is more than aversion, of course, stronger than that. And then real revenge, or upanaha, revenge. So, do we have this? If we have it, that's fine. Then we can sort of open that compartment and air it and quietly get rid of it little by little. Then, of course, there are others like belittling other people, always speaking ill of others, which is called makka. And then we have trying to divide people. You see your best friend getting friendly with somebody else, you try to tell him that, warn that person, say, yes, you know, but so and so is like this, and trying to divisive. It's called palasa, I think. Palasa, yeah. And so on. So these are all these upakilesa, which are proximate. Then there is a very interesting one called Machari, which I'll come to, which sounds like miserly, but and then there are several others, like being obstinate, being arrogant, being having a lot of ego, mana, atimana, and being very stubborn and argumentative and not wanting to take another's point of view, always being, critical and skeptical. So it's good to be so, but this is just by nature, entirely not wanting to bend. Now let us discuss this Machari a little. It sounds, or I thought it was miserly and wanting to not part with one's possession or wealth, whatever. But interestingly, the Buddha has given 4 categories of Machari. Machari could not only be for wealth, it could be for your name and reputation. Now, what does that mean? It means like your heritage, your lineage. You like to say, "Oh, we have lived in this land for so long, so it belongs to us." You're being overprotective on those. Similarly, groups. Another section he mentions is being in groups of people. That's like being racial, or saying our association must do this, and we will try to prevent another association from doing as well. So this sort of competitiveness that comes, and sort of ill will that can happen. And the 4th is avasa, meaning where we live. And I think this machari, or for that matter, any of these upakilesa, are proximate and not so obvious. They are sort of hidden, but they are there. And from time to time, you see it in others. So we have to see it in ourselves. But they can blow up into the full-blown defilements. The full-blown defilements are the ones that we have in the 5 precepts, like killing, sexual misconduct, stealing, lying, and intoxicants. These are also mental intoxicants, but then we can get fully drunk. That is the 5. And let us see now. We know today there is a terrible, terrible situation in the world. There are many wars. But as we speak, we know that children are being killed between 2 parties. on the river of Jordan, which was considered holy, on the banks of it, not on the river, but on the banks or very near, between two groups. Again, it is that it has blown, that having that feeling of we have lived longer here, or this is our group, or this is our in the name of freedom or in the name of justice, the root cause is the Manouri, these inner toxins that can blow up into the full-blown defilements of killing. And even despite being maybe of the same sort of origin, Abrahamic religions, it could be two religions, monotheistic, maybe the same God, but still you can kill each other's children because these things have been allowed to flare up. And we know that it's, hatred cannot be overcome by hatred. Buddha has said this, nahi verena verani. So that's never going to end other than temporarily, as long as this Manouri, the inner, is not corrected. And in this light, the Buddha says in the Vatupama Sutta, he says to bathe the inner bathing. He calls this inner bathing because at the time when he was expounding this teaching, the Vatupama Sutta, there was a Brahmin disciple, a person among the listeners by the name of, I think, Sundarika, Paribrajaka or Sundarika. He was a Brahmin. And he says, what about having, can't we get rid of this by bathing? That is how he has been ingrained in him, in the river Bahuka, that is probably where they were. And he says, the Buddha says very clearly, Buddha names about 6 rivers there, and he says, what can such and such a rivers, and finally he mentions Bahuka, the river this person mentioned. What can Bahuka do? They cannot purify, and none of these rivers can purify an evil doer. And he very clearly says, a fool may there forever bathe, yet will not purify his black deeds. And he tells the Brahmin, it is here, O Brahmin, you must bathe. And we have those Pali words, which I think are very valuable. Sinato antarena sinatena ti. Antarena is internal. Bathe the inner bathing. Sinato antarena sinatena. Sinatena took me a long time to grapple with that. Sinatena, probably it's pronounced, I don't know whether I'm pronouncing it properly, snane. It comes from the word snane, or the snane comes from the word sinatena. That's what it means. And we know that nana or bathing comes from snanya. So it's sinato antarena sinatena. Bathe the inner bathing is the lesson, and it's so valuable in purification. With that, I like to end the purification and move on to wisdom. We have time. We can move on to wisdom. But I have to be very honest. If we look at the Vatupama Sutta, the preamble to it, the background, it is said that it was said in the, the Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika, in Savatthi, the Jeta's Grove. But I have taken the liberty of bringing that into Riverside experiences, because I do feel seeing the dyeing of clothes could not have happened in the Savatthi, Jeta. So they might, and also this inner bathing came up. So I think it has a lot of river reference to rivers, and probably it was after a walk that it was discussed at the Jetavana. Right, so with that, let us go to the wisdom section, which is Panya. And many times the Buddha compares life, existence, to a flowing river. It is, of course, a river is forever changing. A series of different moments joined together to appear like one continuous flow of column of water is a river. So it hides this momentary changing, like how the wisdom is to see this momentary changing within ourselves. Now, the Greek philosopher Heraclitus also has said that about the river changing, and what he actually said was, those who step into the same river are in fact in different waters. That the water is now different. That, as far as I can see, is what Heraclitus said. But of course, the internet can always distort, and there's a lot of misinformation. They could even give it, attribute it to Heraclitus, to saying that man can't cross the same river twice, or the same man can. But the Buddha's teaching is that the same man can't cross the same river, or for that matter, I think he can't even cross a different river, because man is changing. We are changing from minute to minute. So that is the wisdom in the one. But there are so many suttas, and we have been hearing about Sakaya Ditti and so forth, which is having a personality view and sticking to those 5 aggregates. We are not seeing the true nature of the 5 aggregates. So let us take one of the suttas, which is when a beautiful one by the Riverside, when the Buddha sees a refers to a lump of foam of rock. And we have all seen the soap lather, the foam. It is tiny, tiny bubbles, and made of tiny, tiny bubbles. And these bubbles, I think sometimes they burst and become a bigger bubble, and then they keep changing. And they are so hollow, each bubble is hollow, and they are so friable and fragile, we can just blow them away. So it's so insubstantial. The foam is insubstantial, and the foam was likened to our bodies, or rupa. Pena pin rupamang rupam. The rupa is like this pena pin rupamang rupam. Vedana bubulupama. The next thing, at the riverside, it starts raining. Big blocks of water are falling into the river. Not a heavy rain like we have had recently, but big drops. And they each causes a bubble. A bubble, as you know, you've seen soap bubbles or water bubbles. Again, it's empty, hollow inside. So Vedana are like Bhubulupama, they come and go, the different feelings. And then, think of at the riverside, now the rain has ceased, and still there is so much of moisture in the air, the sun is just creeping out. You see the colors of a rainbow. And the rainbow is not actually there. This was long before Isaac Newton broke white light to the 7 colors, and in the 7 colors back to white, like what is the prism in the other opposite direction. Then the Buddha says, this is what is a mirage, like a mirage. The rainbow is very similar to a mirage. It's actually not there. It's just you see it like that for various scientific reasons. So the refraction of light is what caused even the mirage. So this is what it's likened to. It's a deception. Perception is a deception. It deceives you. And you think there is color there. So, Penapin Rupamang Rupam, Vedana Bupulupama, Marin Rupama, Sanya, Sankara, Kandalupama. The Sankara, or the next one, the 4th one, are our choices, our volitions, our thoughts, are likened to the trunk of a banana tree, where if you keep on peeling at the middle, there is nothing, it's hollow at the end. And finally, consciousness, which was there to an extent spread across, when you had the feeling, you were conscious, there was a consciousness of the feelings and so forth, or the perception, whatever. That seems the most difficult one to understand, but that again is like a magician who was showing the tricks, and you were enthralled, and even after the show you might be thinking of it. But if you had known what the trick was, there is nothing to think about, there's nothing fascinating there. So consciousness is like a magician who is showing tricks. So this is the Penapindukuma told at the banks of the Ganges in an area called Ayodhya. You don't know whether it's the current Ayodhya area. There is another very interesting sutta about, now these were about the 5 aggregates, the nature of the 5 aggregates at the riverside, similes. There is another one about what happens to the clinging, what will happen to if you cling to these 5 aggregates. Now, this is here the man is being caught in the current of the river and he is getting pushed along. He wants to stop himself. He doesn't want to get dragged around the river. So he clutches at a grass and the grass comes away. So clinging to the grass was like your form. Clinging to your form is not going to help you to stop yourself from getting dragged along in the current. There is another type of grass, also the grass family, with very sharp blades. So you cling to that, your fingers will get cut and you are feeling, but still you are getting, if it gets uprooted, it's not going to stop you from getting. And then there are reeds on the bank, which are long-leaved, trees, long leaves, not like a grass. And that's very deceptive. You think that's going to stop you, you hang on to the likens, the reeds to the perception, the deceptive perception, and that also doesn't, it comes off in your hand and you get dragged down. Then you see creepers and you hang on to creepers. That will of course untangle and come along with you for a while, like what the thoughts do. But again, it doesn't stop you from getting dragged along in the current. And finally you see a bush and you think, wow, that sounds much better. That sounds firmer and stronger, but that too doesn't stop you. The bush will also not be strong enough to stop you from getting dragged. So these 5 types of vegetation on the bank of the river were likened to the clinging, not to cling to these. These were likened to the 5, again, aggregates, and not to cling to them if you want to save yourself from the current. Like now that is called the Nadi Sutta. Nadi is a river. So clinging to that 5 is the 5 aggregates are the panchaskandha, clinging to them is pancha upadanaskandha, beautifully. I feel it's not only knowing the content of this, how beautiful the teaching is. Buddha's, I felt that one of the reasons I wanted to, highlight this was what an awesome teacher. And the style of teaching itself is wonderful. Now, I'd like to finish with not about purification or about wisdom, but about you and me and how we can have hazards while we are in this stream to Nibbana. Now, in this sutta that I'm going to next read is from the Samyutta Nikaya. The river has changed now. All this time the river current was tanna and it was dragging us down, holding us down to samsara, the cycle of birth and death. But now think of this river, we are in the river because we are wanting to, and we have come into this situation of learning the Dhamma, practicing the Dhamma. And this current now is mindfulness. So if we stay in this current, it will definitely get us for sure to at some day. Of course, we have to work on it perhaps, but if we don't work and we stay in mindfulness to an extent, very slowly, even someday there is hope of getting all rivers go to the ocean, finally getting to Nibbana. This time, this is told at the riverside. Buddha has some monks with him, and they sit down for a discussion. And there is a cowherd standing by, who is not interested in what they are doing, but he is just idling his time until his herd is grazing. And he is spending his time by throwing little twigs or sticks, say, into the river, and he is enjoying watching them float by. So this is called Darukanda Sutta. Looking at a log or a Darukanda or this is interestingly told that it is also that there was this cowherd who was, idling his time and not interested. So the Buddha probably wanted to realize that this cowherd had the potential to do better than just that. So he asked the people, the monks, when if there are sticks floating in the river, they will definitely go like us in the mindfulness. Eventually, you could go on the path to, if you're in the stream, you will get there to Nibbana. What could stop you? What could stop you? Now, this is, by the way, not a person who has reached Sotapanna. Sotapanna is, of course, guaranteed. And now there also Sota is a stream, and the Buddha has brought the stream, and a stream enterer has swum in the opposite direction. Now let us come back to what we are talking about, Dharukamba Sutta. You started the process, you have not yet come to Sotapanna, you may get obstructed. So he says, what are the things that could obstruct? So one monk says, if the sticks get close to this bank, it could get stuck in those reeds and grasses. Then somebody else says, well, there are reeds and grasses on the other bank also. It could have gone into that direction. Yes, that's another possibility. Somebody else says, well, it could smash against the stone or get caught in a whirlpool and get broken into bits, and then it will never get to the ocean. Yet another person suggests, why not it can get washed up onto high ground and then it will get stuck there. It's not going down to the ocean. Somebody else says it gets nibbled by fish, little by little, and as time goes on, the whole thing is getting eaten up by various aquatic animals. So it will never get there. And somebody else says it need not be aquatic animals, maybe a human hand could come and pick up the stick and then it won't go through. So that way, that's another way in which it won't go. And also, it could just rot. The stick itself is going to rot because it's a long journey, and it will rot before it gets there. Now, what were the similes of this? This was explained then, by which time now the cowherd had got interested, and he turned around and quietly was listening, and then he actually comes and sits to listen to what is going on. For it to veer, the sticks to veer, if the stick veers close to the shore, near shore, that is like our internal six senses, which are now involved, and we are preoccupied with those. And though we had come into this stream, we decided we had other interests, and eyes. We were satisfying the six senses with the eyes, the ears, the smell of food or whatever, taste or whatever. Then the opposite side is their external, other people's six senses. They have given us awards or given us positions or given us a job, or they have told us maybe scholarship, certificates, and then we get dragged into doing other things instead of what we had done. It may be good things, or they have brought us down to bad things. Probably not, because we were mindful, but still this can happen. Then good things are being told to us, and then getting washed up on the high bank was like getting conceited, and then you are stuck. Getting dashed on the stone or into the whirlpool is like getting caught with all the passions and delights and the five hindrances. To be snared by the fish and to be bitten by the fish, that's very interesting. The fish are likened to family and friends. Friends who are now wanting for socializing, spending time socializing. There's little time, but we are socializing. Or the family, looking after family. One of the most common things, we are looking after grandchildren. And saying, no, I was doing all this, but now, I am having to look after my grandchildren. Or my grandchildren are saying, Saturday I just can't, because Saturday afternoon is when my daughter-in-law drops the children off on us, and she wants to have the Saturday evening to herself. How many I know. So this is very common. On the aquatic, the non-aquatic ones was out from a different realm. Our mindfulness has got us to a state where we have been doing well, and now we are thinking of going to the Brahma lokas, and it might be the formless, the Rupavachara or Arupavachara, and now again you got sidetracked and not going to Nibbana, going to the Brahma lokas. And getting, rotting on the way is old age. By the time you started and it had been too slow, you have rotted on the way. So, and that's aging and sickness and never got there. So these are the way why, despite being mindful, you can get. And I thought I should include that as a sort of for us all to have that thing. And with that, I would like to stop. Of course, the Buddha has mentioned in so many places, even on the, he was against, quite rightly, against caste issues. But he said, in this, all the rivers go to the ocean. So again, he said there's oneness of man, and again used the rivers to explain this. Then he has said that those who come into the sasana are all, once they come in, they are in one river. You see? Now that all kinds of people came in, even a Valchakacha, who wouldn't have been a very bright person, perhaps with absolutely no learning, the person who had that Alagadhupama Sutta, where he was told to catch the water snake in the correct place, he had got it at the wrong end of the stick. So there were all kinds of people, but whether they were Shakyan princes or whoever they were, relatives of his, they were all the same in the river. And it goes into the oneness of man. So there are so many things he taught in relation to rivers, and that is why I thought I would bring this up. And with this, I think I would like to end this talk. Thank you for your participation and for your patience. And I wish everybody a trouble-free and short and smooth passage across to the show beyond, which is what we have to, which is the aim. And the show beyond is nothing else but Nibbana, ending of suffering, extinction of suffering once and for all. Ending it halfway is that is why it was said to quench it or relinquish it completely, because it grows up again. That has also been told with a beautiful simile, like when it talks about the banana trees. You remove them, but they'll still regrow because there are rhizomes underground, comes up, and that's very, very true. I have personal experience. One time they said that removed banana plantations can bring on dengue. So really an absurd thing. We can't stop eating bananas because of the dengue risk. But anyway, this was attempted in my garden. And then a few weeks later, the banana trees had sprouted again, and I just remember this teaching. So it is how it is. It has to be once and for all completely removed. Thank you, and I hand over my wait, I'll give you this, then it's clearer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manouri, for that very detailed description of a very important topic. I think listening to you shows the depth of your knowledge, and shows that the breadth you have known. I think you have not followed any process in Buddhism, but all this information is gathered by extensive reading. So this all essentially boils down to the fact that what Buddha was preaching just by staying at the riverside, looking at the river, seeing what happens every day, just nature, and how we use that to give various similes to get across a very important message to each and every one of us. So the sole purpose of all our lives, once you are born, is to attain Nibbana in this very world. So that was like crossing the river. So crossing the river, getting to the other side of the shore is merely the case of attaining Nibbana, complete extinction of suffering. And the way to do that with the shore is by eliminating tanha. Tanha is equated to the current of the flow. If you're going to cross the river, you need to overcome that current. So the current in the context of liberation from this sansaric journey is to get rid of tanha. How to get rid of tanha is by following this eightfold path to Nibbana. Essentials, evolving on that is the sila, samadhi, and bhakya, morality, bhavana, and then the action wisdom. And you brought it in context, a lot of sutras which are going to describe these very essence. Where there is sila, where there is morality, and how to attain this wisdom. Like Nadi Soka Sutta, Tupama Sutta, Salveka Sutta, Nadi Sutta, so many others. So all these suttas related to different modalities that we need to practice in our liberation. So certain things related to the sila, which I think is essential prerequisite. We need to cleanse ourselves, like mental purification, and how to do that. To go in a very simple formula, just look within you. You don't have to read a lot. You don't have to know a lot. You don't have to know all these Pali terms. Just sit for a moment and look within you. Then you will be able to identify all that is wrong. Whatever you call it, 16 defilements or 50 defilements or upakilesa or akilesa or proximate. You will know this. Just look within you. What are the thoughts that come to you? What are your thoughts? Identify this. Identify these defilements and then endeavor to get rid of these defilements and essentially centered around the concept of mindfulness. Mindfulness is just looking at your own mind. Be at the moment. See what is happening. See what's happening in the mind. Then all these things will unflow like a beautiful picture right in front of you.
Any questions for Sonia?
Yeah.
Check, yeah.
So,
Check.
yeah. So if there are any questions, I'm sure you'd like to entertain any comments and see a lot of learned people in this audience, so on and so on. So if you have any comments to make, please go ahead and do so. And if you have any questions, please raise it here. We give the opportunity to those who are physically present here in this beautiful Maitri audience. Any comments or questions, please? Soma, would like to say something?
Yeah, they're there.
French doesn't matter.